All right, I want to welcome on to this Q&A. Again, I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. There was a question came in last week that I do want to hit. There was a question. There was a question in general about the lineage of King David, and the question was about Yishai, about whether Yishai himself either questioned his lineage or was considered, was he considered a, what do you call it, a mamzer, what we'll call a bastard child, right? So there's a whole question, about King David's lineage, and the reason, very simple reason, is because the Torah says in the book of Deuteronomy that you are not allowed, that a Moabite is not allowed to come into the community, right, of the Jewish people. So seemingly, even if they convert, right? In other words, the Moabite not allowed into the Jewish community at all. So if that's true, and that's what the Torah says, I mean, that is pretty clear from the book of Deuteronomy. That is what the Torah says. So if that is true, then the question is, how is King David Jewish? Because we all know from the story of Ruth, very clear in the book of Ruth, Ruth is not Jewish. So the question, what level of conversion she had. But even if she did convert, you read the end of the book of Ruth, 3-4 generations later, from the book of Ruth comes King David. Now, the question obviously is that if Ruth isn't Jewish, which made the statement before, we're going to clarify that if Ruth isn't Jewish, it causes the status of King David to come into question. Now, some would say, okay, but isn't it true if the mother's Jewish? I don't care necessarily about the grandmother or great-grandmother, but if the mother is Jewish, yeah, the mother is Jewish, then I don't have a problem. Right? So someone will say, then what does that have to do with Ruth? Seemingly has nothing to do with Ruth. It has more to do with her mother, with his mother. Because his mother's Jewish, then he's Jewish. Very good. So what's the question? The Torah says very clear, a Moabite can never come into the Jewish people, even through conversion. Can never come in. Can never come in. Now, what does that have to do with King David? Because King David is an offspring of Ruth, right? 3-4 generations later, very clear, according to the book of Ruth. He's an offspring, right? He's an offspring of Ruth. Very good. So do I go by his mother, the fact that his mother's Jewish? Or do I say, even if his mother's Jewish, I still have a problem? So it comes on the Gemara in Yevamos. The Gemara in Yevamos says that any Moabite, now normally we say, we go after matrilineal descent. If the mother's Jewish, the kid is Jewish, right? Even the father's a non-Jew. Doesn't matter, right? We go after the mother. Could be even, that the non-Jew is the father, right? That the kid has a blemish on the soul, but it doesn't necessarily have to go through conversion, right? There is a question among the later commentaries whether they do or they don't, but essentially you don't have to. Good thing to do, just to do it formally, whatever. But, in either case, what's the problem here? What's the problem with Ruth? Why don't we just go after the mother? So what's the simple answer? The simple answer is that, according to the Gemara in Yevamos, when a Moabite, again, doesn't apply necessarily to other people, because again, the problem is it says a Moabite can never come in the congregation of the Jewish people. So what does that mean? So it says the Gemara in Yevamos, you know what it means? It means that even if it's a Moabite woman, even the Moabite woman, and she converts. What's the problem? The problem is they still have the status of a Moabite. You're going to say, it doesn't make sense, but the mother's Jewish, proper conversion. Okay. But the Gemara seems to say that it's kind of like having a recessive gene, like it's always there. So in general, it doesn't matter if King David's mother is Jewish or not. The fact is, there's Moabite all the way down, all the way Ruth down. So if Ruth isn't Jewish, that means her kids aren't Jewish. And if her kids aren't Jewish, their kids aren't Jewish. Right? Unless obviously, there would be a conversion, but conversion shouldn't help over here. So therefore, Ruth asked to be Jewish, but there was an unknown halacha here. When it says a Moabite can never enter the community of the Jewish people. A Moabite not entering means, as the Gemara says, Moabite men, not women. That means if a man converts, Moabite man, he can never enter the congregation. Only a woman's allowed to. Now, this wasn't so well known. Right? This law wasn't really so well known. And not only that, but people, that's one of the reasons we read the book of Ruth on the holiday of Shavuot, which commemorates the giving of the Torah. Because the giving of the Torah is not just about giving the written law. We're commemorating the giving of the Torah is also oral law. Not only that, the Jews, when they got to Mount Sinai, were considered converts. Right? After God revealed himself. So you need oral law in order to tell me why Ruth is Jewish. Right? So we gave the answer. They had someone dog me for a long time. And I asked them, they said, I never listen to oral law, I'll never listen to oral law. Yeah, I'm only going to listen to what God says and what the Torah says. So I said, okay, what's the answer to this? The Torah says a Moabite can never enter the congregation of the Jewish people. If a Moabite cannot enter the covenant or be part of the Jewish people, that means Ruth isn't Jewish. How can she be Jewish? How can King David be Jewish? Now, this is a serious problem for Jews as well as Christians, because according to Christianity, you have a difference of opinion among the Gospels how they get the lineage to King David. Doesn't matter, right? Now, for them, also King David is significant. Now, I was not to say King David's Jewish, so for them also, right, maybe it's less of an issue, but should also be Jewish. So I told this person, I said, I know what the answer is. I said, give me an answer according to anything that the Torah says or anything in Tanakh. Right? According to prophets, minor prophets, writings, the Torah itself, show me somewhere in any of these writings that have nothing to do with Jewish law that makes King David Jewish. Because the fact is he comes from Ruth. And Ruth comes from Moab. And Moab's not allowed to join the congregation of the Jewish people. Checkmate. So for months this went on. I said, find me an answer. You're not going to like any of my answers. There's that. I said, I know what the answer is. But you have to go to oral law to get the answer. Because if you don't go to oral law to get the answer, guess what? King David ain't Jewish. He's not Jewish. Right? So that answers the question about the lineage of King David. Now, there was another question. There was another question about Yishai, right? King David's father. Now, the Gemara in Bava Basra mentions 4 people that only died. They didn't sin, but they only died because of the sin of Adam and Eve. And one of them was Yishai. So Yishai is the grandson, right, of Boaz and Ruth. That means King David would be a great-grandson. So they had a number of righteous children, but what did Yishai have doubts on? He had doubts on the fact of his ancestry. Now, he was considered the leading Torah authority of that time, right, during that day. But as we said, what's the question on Yishai? Same question on Ruth. His grandmother is a convert, came from Moab. So there's a question of the legitimacy, of her marriage to Boaz. Now, at that time, Ruth marries Boaz. Boaz is very old, right? Ruth marries him. And what happens to Boaz? He dies. Night after he dies. His whole thing, Ruth finally gets remarried, and he dies. Right? She got pregnant the first time, but he dies. So some say it was that the fact that he married a Moabite woman, even if he converted, wasn't good. It wasn't a good thing to do. Right? Made a mark against his genealogy, his pedigree. One reason, one potential reason. There are other reasons why he might have died. Right? But what's the problem? The Torah says you're not allowed to marry a Moabite convert. Forbidden. So you have to, as we said before, you have to come on to oral law. And it means a converted male Moabites who were cruel, right? The reason they weren't allowed to join the Jewish community and convert is because they were cruel. Because Jewish people wanted to go through the land. They didn't want to give them food or water to help them. But so the men weren't allowed to convert. The women were. So therefore Boaz marries Ruth in order to say this is fine, right? But that was not known. The law wasn't known, at that time. And Ruth, ends up conceiving. She gave birth to their son Oved, who was the father of Yishai, who was the father of David. Right? So you had some people that would say, oh, so why did Boaz die? You know why Boaz died? Because he went into a forbidden relationship. He wasn't allowed to marry Ruth because a convert, even from Moab, is forbidden. Right? Nonetheless, it was shown, right? It was shown, right, that what happened? That it was accepted. Right? That it was totally accepted. And it wasn't forbidden. But what happened? Yishai still felt bad. His status was considered questionable. Right? Not permitted to remain with his wife, who was Jewish. Nonetheless, what did he do? He separated. He separated from her, and that was it. He didn't have any more children. So what did he say? He said, I'm freeing you conditionally, meaning if my status as a Jew is legitimate, right, then you're free to the proper Jewish convert to marry me. Very good. If my status is blemished, he said, and I have the legal status of a Moabite convert, it's forbidden to marry a Jew. Right? So he says, what am I doing? He said, I'm not giving you your freedom per se, but it's what we call a shifra kananis, a Canaanite maidservant. And in that case, a Canaanite maidservant is allowed to marry a Moabite convert, right? He gave him different ways out, at least to figure out the problem if he could stay married to her or not. So his wife, Nitzevet, that was her name, right? David's mother. And she was separate for many years. And she wanted to have more children. So what'd she do? So she mentioned Yishai's plan, right? Found out about Yishai's plan. And this is what happened. Says, let's learn. Right? So this maidservant told Nitzeves of Yishai's plan. So what did she do? She says, let's learn from your ancestress and replicate the action. Let's do the same thing that Rachel did, right, with Leah. So with the prayer on her lips, that was her plan. She took the place of the maidservant, and that night Nitzavah conceived. But Yishai didn't know, right? Didn't know it was her. Then she becomes pregnant, right? 3 months later, she starts to show. So now there's a problem. Kids want to kill her because of infidelity, right? Adultery. Now, she doesn't want to embarrass her husband, just like Tamar did not want to embarrass Yehuda. So what does she do? She's silent. She doesn't say anything. And the fact that she was silent, what happened? She had a child of such greatness. Who would that child be? None other than King David himself. So Yishai had compassion for her. He told his sons, don't touch her, don't kill her. Child will be born, treated as a lowly and despised servant. That's what happened. And everyone will realize his status is questionable. He won't be able to marry a Jew, right? Questionable status. So therefore, what happened? So her son was treated by the brothers as an outcast, right? Meaning, he came through sin, seemingly. So he would come back, from being out in Beit Lechem, where he lived, and he was shunned by everybody, by the townspeople, by his family, right? If something was lost, they accused him because he's an illegitimate child. So at that point, the entire lineage of King David was questioned. Sorry, entire lineage of Yishai was questioned on this premise of a Moabite convert. Now, even though people said, Boaz that time was Gadol Hador, was the greatest, rabbi of that generation, right? Nonetheless, you see the great children that Yishai had, but you see, he had this one child, right, which he didn't know. He didn't know it was his. So you have this whole thing with King David and how he gets anointed, right? And, he didn't take any of the sons, except for David. And everyone was like shocked. Why would you take him? He's illegitimate. He's this, he's that, right? But what happened? God saw his greatness. God saw his greatness. And because God saw his greatness, he was the one to be anointed. He had 7 other sons. Yishai had 7 other sons. These 7 other sons could have been Mashiach, could have been the harbinger of the Mashiach, of the Messiah. But it came through who? Came through King David. Right? So, not only did he have humble beginnings, but you see the difficulty he went through. Not to mention, right? Not to mention, not to mention the fact that what? Not to mention the way he was treated by his brothers, but he had all kinds of other trials. But when they saw how great he was, what happened, right? You got to remember also, King David's mother is quiet over here, right? Nitzavah over here is quiet. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't say anything, about the switch and what happened and, and all that. And she also wasn't treated so well. Her husband saved her. Sons would have killed her for adultery, right? Even though she didn't say anything, right? Rather be thrust in a fiery furnace, as Tamar said about Yehuda, rather do that than embarrass someone in public. Very true. So for that, she got tremendous reward with this child. And King David himself absorbed that strength. He had tremendous confidence. Forget about how the world treated him, and everything else. He was able to defeat everybody, right? All the people that wanted him dead, right? All the nations. So what did she teach him? One of the things she taught him was you got to be strong. You got to have inner convictions, irrespective of the cruelty that might happen. So if anyone feels bad for whatever they go through, whatever it may be, right? I would tell people clear as day. If you think life is hard, I'm not saying people don't have hard lives. If people think life is hard, and no, life is unbearable, so I will give everyone very free advice. The free advice is when you're down, you think you're out, things are bad, things are hard, things seem impossible. Yeah, open up the book of Psalms. Just read the book of Psalms. You can read anywhere. It doesn't really matter where. You read anywhere, you see what King David says. Never complains. Never says anything against God. I don't deserve you to save me or help me, but I know you're going to do it, right, in your infinite mercy. And he has all kinds of problems. From, his father, King Saul, wants to kill him. His sons want to kill him, Avshalom and Adoniyahu, right? He's always running. He has no menuchas and nefesh, he has no equilibrium, nothing. He's always running for his life. When you read the book of Psalms, and it's pretty amazing. You don't see one complaint. You don't see one word of blasphemy against God. Why are you doing this? It isn't fair. Look at what happened with my lineage. Look what my mother had to suffer through. What my great-great-grandmother had to suffer through. Humiliation. Is kid, is she really Jewish? And she's not Jewish. And all this. Look what he had to suffer. You're treated like a dog. Treated like a dog by his own family. Because his mother refused to embarrass her husband. Refused to embarrass him in public. That's huge. Same thing that Yehuda did. Sorry, Tamar did to Yehuda. She was supposed to be killed. So she said, whoever these, the staff and whatever belongs to, that's the one that got me pregnant. And he knew. And he knew it was him. So she would rather be thrown in a fiery furnace and die than embarrass someone in public. That's huge. So she learned it out. She learned this whole thing out from also what Rachel did with Leah, not to embarrass her. And she merited such a son. That, when the Messiah comes, whenever that shall be, it should be speedily in our days. Yeah, has to be from the lineage of King David. But think about where he came from. Right? I didn't mention the best part. Where does Ruth come from? Moab. Where does Moab come from? From my father, right? Lot and his two daughters. An incestuous relationship. So you have an incestuous relationship that produces Ruth. And from Ruth comes 3 generations later, the future Messiah or whatever of the Jewish people. You can't even make this up. Right? You can't even make this up. Yeah, but look what he goes through. Look what he goes through. Right? It's unbelievable what happens. Made fun of, scoffed at, treated like a dog. You look at what King David says in the book of Psalms. Anywhere you read, right? He says many times, I don't deserve your help, but you're going to help your servant. Anyway, he doesn't complain. All he does is sing the praise of God. You're going to say, well, if I was on King David's level, okay, we're not. Very good. Very good. And on a much higher level than we'll be in 10 lifetimes, 20 lifetimes, 1 billion lifetimes. Okay. But look what he went through. Look what he became. Look at the adversity that I fight against. So there's hope for us. There is definitely hope for us, but again, if we think we have it bad, and again, I'm not saying we don't. You have all kinds of trials, tribulations they go through, which, we mentioned many times. But even with that, he never complained. He absolutely never complained. So you read anywhere in the book of Psalms, give you strength because, you think he had it easy? He didn't have the merit to build the Beis Hamikdash, to build the temple. It had to be through Solomon. Why? He's too busy fighting wars. His hands were full of blood. But, he had to say to the Jewish people. He had to fight for the Jewish people. Very good. And he fought a lot to kill a lot of people. God didn't want someone with so much blood on his hands building the temple. Okay, so that could be ego or ego, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call it. And, he could say, but it could have come through me. I could have built God's place. But they wouldn't allow him to, as great as he was. And they understood how great he was. But as great as he was, he had too much blood on his hands. It's mind-boggling. Right? Mind-boggling. Oh, but he raised himself to. Yeah. So, seemingly a person, even if they're a mamzer, means a person born from I'm not going to say a bastard child, that's how they translate it, but we'll call it a union that never should have been, that God allowed. That God allowed this child to be born. Now, the only person he can marry is someone from the same lineage, or someone who's a convert. Right? You can say, oh, a convert, why? Because there's a problem with pedigree here. There's a blemish on the soul. So a convert, okay, even though they're looked at as as a newborn child after they convert, still there's an issue with pedigree. From where they came from. It's not their fault, but it's where they came from. Very good. So they're converts allowed to marry mamzer. Now, there's probably very few problems of a mamzer today because you have to have a legitimate marriage for that. In other words, you'd have kosher witnesses. And if you don't have kosher witnesses, it's not really a marriage in general. So therefore, Rav Moshe Feinstein, in blessed memory, got rid of most of these problems. That you wouldn't have, it's very rare to find a mamzer today. Not impossible, but right, not it's not so common. Right? So even a mamzer born in that relationship, from a forbidden relationship, can also be a big rabbinic scholar. Could also be head of yeshiva. Could also do, other things. So they could have a lowly status in other ways. That doesn't mean they can overcome it. Now, somebody asks, a mamzer, again, not a mom, there, let me spell it here. Not a monster, a mamzer, right? M-A-M-Z-E-R. That's how you pronounce it. That's how you spell it. A mamzer. A mamzer, whoops. A mamzer comes from two people that are not allowed to be together. Right? It's a forbidden relationship. Right? So they're not allowed to be together. Right? It's a forbidden relationship. Nonetheless, what happens if the woman gets pregnant? So with the child, they shouldn't have had, but God allowed them to have the child. Very good. God allowed to have the child. So the halacha is they can only marry someone from the same union or a convert. That's it. Right? It almost doesn't exist today. According to Rav Moshe Feinstein, a blessed memory, they were trying for the last generation in America. Right? No question. You almost don't have the problem today. He probably got rid of like 98% of all the problems that there would be. That this would cause. But it's a forbidden relationship. It's a relationship two people are not allowed to be together, and they have a child. Right? That's what a mamzer is. Someone asks, rare but possible. Okay, let's see. What's the question? Child still in the womb, but awakes, hears the sin of dark magic. Okay, sorcery, right? Because anyone can tap into sorcery. Not that you should. Definitely you shouldn't do it. Even non-Jews shouldn't do it. Let's say they awake, they hear sorcery. I don't know. They hear sorcery. Is that child cursed because of it? No. Just because they hear it doesn't mean they're cursed by it. Right? Sounds like Harry Potter. Yeah, not cursed by it. Definitely not cursed by it. Could it affect them if they're around? Maybe. Maybe it could affect them. Yeah, I'm not cursed by it though. Yeah, and how would you get out of the curse? Well, they're not cursed. They're not cursed. And if the child was unaware of it, yeah, if they're unaware of it, then yeah, I don't know how. Just because someone's unaware of it doesn't mean you don't have it. But even if you would have it, and they don't know about it, does it affect them? Probably affects them. I'll tell you about one curse. One curse that we do know about. And that is, I'll get in trouble for saying this, but it's okay. And that is that there's a curse of Ham, Noah's son, because he saw his father's nakedness and told his two brothers. Two brothers, Shem and Yefes, cover up their father's nakedness after he's drunk, right after he's plastered. They cover up his nakedness. They don't see his nakedness. But Ham told them about his nakedness. So what did Noah do? He cursed them. He cursed Ham. Now, when he cursed Ham, he didn't just curse him, right? He cursed all future generations. And basically, he said that all your progeny are going to be slaves. They're all going to be slaves to your brothers. That was the curse. So where do I get in trouble here? I get in trouble because who are we talking about? Who is descendants? The descendants, the people of Africa. That's who his descendants are. Now, if you look at Africa in general, right? Africa's been ravaged for hundreds of years, ravaged by war and famine, right? Mostly by war. They've had all kinds of weather issues and famines and whatever. But even though some of the country was taken over by France, some by England, right? They eventually gave them autonomy at some point. So I would ask the question, very, very simple question. And my simple question is, even if they were taken over, even if they were colonized, even if they were enslaved. Okay, so let's say over 100 years, 150 years, the colonization is done, right? Maybe less. Let's say 100 years. Yeah, let's say 100 years. Now, it's probably more than that. But even so, how many years are we going to give an entire continent the ability to prosper? I mean, every nation's had their day. Portugal, the time of colonization of America and other places, and discovery of other lands. Portugal, major world power at that time. They ain't nothing now. Not even soccer that much, right? England had its day. Italy's had its day. Germany's had its day. A lot of countries have had their day. I don't know, Australia. I don't know, maybe Australia hasn't done that much for the world, but it's necessarily as a major world power. But right, there are a lot of nations that haven't done anything recently, have had, have had prosperity. Have had economic prosperity, military prosperity. One continent has not done anything. Nothing. Okay, you can tell me they have raw materials. Very good. Right? A lot of raw materials. But it's been plagued by war. Been plagued by famine. Now you say it's not their fault. Not their fault. They were they were colonized and whatever. They weren't educated properly. True. Weren't educated properly, let's say. They were made as slaves. So again, even after that, let's say things change. New government, new education system, new everything, right? How long should it take for any of these nations to prosper? 50 years. Give them 100 years. Give them 150 years. How long? But there's one thing. And again, I'll get a lot of flack for this, but there's one thing you see, even if they go to other countries. Some prosper, maybe individuals do, but as a group, an absolute disaster. Disaster. Now, you can give me 150 reasons why. Okay. I'll take all the reasons. They put in slums, they don't get educated, right? All kinds of reasons. Okay. I'll take all of them. Every single reason I'll take. At some point, you have to ask the question, how can they still be stuck in the same situation? Or a similar situation? Not everybody. There are people who come out of it. Okay, individuals. But as a group, it's a good thing we're recording here. As a group, the single biggest disaster of any other ethnic group, any other nation, biggest disaster. Why? Not my question. Victor Miller asked the question. Yeah, it'll be 10 times greater than I'll ever be in 10 lifetimes, one of the Torah giants of the last generation. There's only one answer. You can give me all kinds of sociological answers, other answers, whatever it is. Yeah, but that's not the answer. There's only one answer that makes sense. With all the other things going on in the world, one answer. You have to go back to when Noah cursed his son. Because if you don't go back to Noah cursing his son, there's no logical reason why you have a whole group of people that just been disaster. The country, the continent's been a disaster. I mean, it's unheard of. I mean, come on. Every nation, you got South Africa, okay. So, they've had prosperity to a certain extent, and now they're also a disaster. Tremendous disaster. As well, but, you got people there can't leave. And they're stuck there. A friend of mine told me many years ago, he remembers when the rand was 1-to-1 to the dollar. And now it's like almost 18 to the dollar. It went to like 2 to the dollar, 4 to the dollar, 8 to the dollar. I mean, the rand's worth nothing. It's worth, it's like 18 or whatever. I know someone, goes fundraising there. I was like, so what's the rand worth now? It's like 16, 18 to the dollar. It's nothing. Right? People living there like kings, okay, but the rand's not worth anything. So they've had some level of prosperity. Right? There are people who have made a lot of money there. Okay. They have, much easier life. Many ways, even though they live behind barbed wire and other things. Right? Nonetheless, they have a lot of help in their house, different things. Okay. But if you don't come on to this, and, people say, oh, it's racist, it's this and that. I'm just asking a very simple question. Why is that continent floundered? Floundered. More than anything else. That is the curse. Because it doesn't make sense rationally. I'm not saying individuals can come out of it. You see, there are some individuals that have come out of it. The vast majority, been disaster. An absolute disaster. You say they've been discriminated against, they've been this, okay. Right? No one's been discriminated more than Jews. No offense to any other ethnic group. You put them all together, it's not even close. I'm not saying there's not discrimination, there is. Compared to the Jewish people, no. I don't think it's close. But, so a curse is the real thing. 100% it's a real thing. But if I wouldn't know, and this is really the point, that we're talking about sorcery here, but we're talking about a curse that a person gave his kids. And you have to understand Noah was a prophet also. So Noah curses his son. And Noah says, you are going to be cursed. You and all your progeny are going to be cursed. You're going to be slaves to your other two brothers. If I would not know that, then you would have to ask the question, why the offspring of, why the offspring of Ham and what they've been in the continent they were on and blah, blah, blah. Why has that been an absolute disaster? So again, people give me different reasons. Sociological reasons, educational reasons, okay, but at some point you have to say the buck stops here. When are people going to stop making excuses? You got America's, it's a melting pot. I mean, more of a melting pot now that, Biden let so many people in, right, illegally. But again, Koreans have done well there. Chinese people do well there. Hispanics do well there. There's ups and downs, whatever. It's one group has had very, very hard time. Extremely hard time. Yeah, not normal. It's not normal. So that's the only answer. You can tell me they were put in ghettos. You can tell me they weren't educated. You can tell me all kinds of things. Okay. Yeah, they may all be true. I'll take all the reasons. I'll take 150 reasons, but at some point, some of them should get out of it, or all of them should get out of it. Something should change. Can't perpetuate itself forever. It's kind of like buying property in Israel. You live in a war zone. No pun intended. In the last 30 years, prices have never gone down. Buying apartments or houses here. That makes no sense either. Makes absolutely no sense. Yeah. But at some point, something should change. Now, again, if I didn't know there was a curse, we come up with all kinds of reasons, but that should answer why it's still the same so many years later. Now, it could be individuals can come out of it. The whole group's not going to come out of it because, again, you have the curse. But the point is that a curse in general, it can have power. It can have power. It can have a tremendous amount of power. Now, is it possible that someone gets cursed, they can come out of it? They could. In theory, they could. Not forever. Depends what, depends what it is. So then someone asks, how do we know that people of Africa are Ham's descendants? That's something we know. We know that. That's where his descendants went. Right? Historically, that's where they went. So if that's where they went, so the assumption is the whole continent was that's where they were. Right? That's where they migrated to. So that's how we know. Are you allowed, someone asked, to hang pictures of deceased relatives? Why not? If they were evil, I wouldn't. If they were, God-fearing people, yeah. Yeah, but let's say they grew up not knowing anything. Could you hang up a picture? Yeah. 100%. Would I tell people to hang up, pictures of, athletes or actors or whatever? No. Most of these people are scum of the earth, right? But a deceased loved one, yeah. Even if they don't know anything, I would say though, if they were cruel or they were evil in any way, I wouldn't. But you could, But you definitely could. Someone says Moab was cursed, but not the women. But how would you know that? You would only know that because that's what the halacha is, right? It says all of Moab. All of Moab is not allowed to convert. All of Moab means men, women, everybody. Yeah. The rabbis told us no, it only means the men, not the women, because the men were cruel. The men weren't allowed Jewish people to come in. They were cruel, right? So the women weren't, so they're allowed to convert, not the men. Today it's really a moot point because Sancherib messed up all the nations, so we don't know who anybody is anyway. But this is a crucial point to understand why King David's Jewish. Right? Otherwise, if Ruth isn't considered Jewish, she's still, there's still, left of her a Moabite, then it goes all the way down. Even if she's the mother, it doesn't matter. Right? So her son or daughter, they're considered Moabites. Right? Their kids are considered Moabites. So the father, mother of King David, the mother most important, is also considered a Moabite. She has to be considered Jewish. If she's not considered Jewish, King David's not Jewish. Right? So they look at King David, they'll say, oh, he's a mamzer, but he wasn't. The way it looked, but that's not what he was. Right? There's just one point I want to make clear. I want to make absolutely clear, and that is that, you have to know how to read Tanakh also. If you read the verses just the way they are, it's incomprehensible. Many, many things are incomprehensible. You need proper commentary because a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Right? That is no question. Right? And, I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm not saying you can't ask the questions. These are good questions without background. Yeah. Same thing, same thing with King David. He marries Bathsheba. They say, how could he marry to her? She was married to Uriah Hittite. Mentioned this last week, right? She was married to Uriah Hittite. Very good. Uriah Hittite. King David sent them in battle in the front lines, and everyone who went into battle, they wrote a get to their wives. They wrote a bill of divorce. If I don't make it back, it's like you're divorced. So she wasn't married. So he's with her. She's not considered married. Not only that, how could King David send him? Doesn't look good. He's married by Malchus. He was considered a rebel against the king. Death penalty. In Psalm 51, Nathan the prophet chastises him. If you want to chastise them, he wouldn't have thought he did anything wrong, right? And the Gemara says anyone thought he sinned is making a mistake. There's something there, but he didn't. It wasn't adultery. He didn't commit adultery. She was divorced, right? You'll tell me it didn't look good. Okay. Maybe it didn't look good for his status. Good. Is he married to her? Is he considered married to her? No. Right? That wasn't a problem. Sorry, she wasn't considered married at that point. Technically speaking, she wasn't married. He got sent to the front lines to die. Okay? He ain't coming back. Right? Since he's not coming back, it's like she's divorced. Now, can King David marry someone that's divorced? Yes. Somebody asks, was course Noah gave really a prophecy from God? He's a prophet. Obviously, what came out of his mouth, God wanted to come out of his mouth. If not, he wouldn't have said what he said. He said, but you got free choice. So either you can tell me God put the words in his mouth, or you can tell me he said it and God agreed, and didn't have a problem with it. And that was the end result. Right? We can say things that have horrific ramifications. Now, why does God stop us? He could stop us. You can say, but he'd take away your free will. Okay. Right? Or what comes out of a person's mouth, sometimes the person will say something, I never meant to say that, but why'd you say it? It came out of your mouth. God wanted it to come out of your mouth, for whatever reason. But still your sin. Right? 100%. So God knew that could happen. And God allowed it to happen. Now, there are things that happen that maybe God's not so happy about. Okay. But he allows it to happen and there are ramifications. Now, maybe you tell me, if God didn't want a certain nation to be cursed, then they wouldn't be cursed. Bilam wanted to curse the Jewish people, didn't allow them to. Here he allowed the curse to happen. Right? So the end result was it happened. So if it happened, that means God wanted it. Why did God want them cursed more than anyone else? Can't answer. But seemingly he agreed. Do we know who the Moabites are today? I said no. We have no idea who anybody is. Right? No one can trace their lineage back. Right? Except us. But there's no one else. Because all the nations were mixed up. So we don't know who the Moabites are. We don't know who the Amalekites are. We know certain character traits of the Amalekites, but we don't know who the Amalekites are. We can't even say every black person is from Ham. I'm saying where they were. Right? The curse is on the nation. Where'd they go? Curse is on the son. Where did the progeny go? They ended up in Africa. Yeah? They ended up in Africa. They're an offspring. They're an offspring. They want to tell me, some are not mixed in, maybe, but I'm saying that's the curse. It's anyone who's an offspring. I'm not saying, again, individuals can probably break it. Yeah. But even if you want to say they're all not the same, okay, what do you do with an entire continent? The entire continent is a waste of a continent. Never done nothing for the world. So you want to say, maybe there's only some of the blacks. So what? So I care if some of the blacks or not. The whole continent's a disaster. That's where they went to. So if that's where they went to, game over. The whole place is a disaster. You're going to say, well, some of them maybe aren't cursed. Okay. Maybe some of them aren't. Well, the vast majority are, and it's been a disaster. That's the bottom line. Right? That is the bottom line. Someone asks, is it possible to be cursed others? Possibly cursed by others while in the mother's womb? I answered that. Yeah. can someone be cursed? I don't know. I don't know if it works. I don't know if it has, I don't know if it has any power to it. I mean, someone could, in theory, they could curse someone before the baby's born. Does that mean anything? I don't know. I don't know if it means anything. Baby's born, it's got a free slate. It's got a clean slate. Whatever its potential is. It doesn't come out cursed. Again, the child itself, there's an end result. What's the end result? It's a forbidden relationship. Very good. That's the end result. Right? That's the end result. Is it the child's fault? No, but there's a reality. It's not cursed from the inside. The child's cursed when it's born. Yeah. So in the case of Cham, anyone coming out from that, from those people are cursed. It's not about sorcery inside or not. It has nothing to do with it. But you're asking a different question. If someone put, I don't know, some spell on an unborn child, does it have an effect? I don't know. I don't know if it has an effect or not. When it's born, I would say it might have an effect. Maybe it has an effect when it's born. When it's unborn, I don't think it can do anything. Shouldn't be able to do anything. Only when it's born. Right? That's what I would think. So that's the ultimate question, right? The ultimate question is that the whole place, the whole place is a disaster. You're gonna say every single person, again, people can probably get out of it somehow, but not as a nation, not as a group, right? Not as a group. Somebody asks, does nakedness have a different meaning than without clothes? Nope. It means what it means, right? Does it have any spiritual meaning? Does it have any spiritual meaning? That I'll have to think about. Normally we say nakedness, we mean literally. The private parts are uncovered. Should we say shalom to Muslims? I don't know, for the sake of peace. I have this question, I get off a bus and it's an Arab driver. Should I say thank you? Getting off the bus. At least, I got off in one piece if he drove like a maniac. I always have this question. So what do you do? So someone asks me practically, what do you do? Usually I say thank you anyway, knowing that he probably wants to kill me. But, for the sake of peace, you say thank you. Can a child overcome the curse that they were born with? So in this case, if it's an offspring of Ham, no. But again, depends what the curse is. If you're talking about the curse of sorcery, does that have an effect? I don't know. I don't know if it really has an effect or not. All these things, it could have an effect. I don't know. I have to think about it more. What level of effect does it really have? Or not. I don't know. I don't know if it has an effect or not. There are things a person can do, sorcery, whatever, can affect someone. The question is how far. How far. It's like bringing up souls, bringing up other souls or whatever. That can have an effect on a person. It can be dangerous, right? But it's not a curse on them. I wouldn't say it's a curse on them. But according to Kabbalah, someone could put a curse on someone and could kill them. Doesn't mean it will. So I'll tell you like this: if a person's righteous, someone puts a curse on them, it won't affect them. Maybe they're not righteous, maybe it will. I don't know. I have to look into it more. Yeah. Any other let me see any other questions here. Yeah, any other questions? I mean, curse is not to be, taken lightly, no question. The question is how powerful they really are. That's the question. That is really the question. Yeah. Any other questions? Uh, Someone asked, I found Sephardic as well as Ashkenazic lineage on my mother's side. Okay, but it's broken chain. My mother's a Christian. So the only way to find out if you were Jewish is if your grandmother, great grandmother had a Jewish marriage document of 4 generations buried in a Jewish cemetery. If you could produce any of that, then there's a good chance you might be Jewish. If not, then you'd have to go through conversion anyway. Someone says the Muslim children of Ham. No, it's only the blacks, not Muslim. Muslims seem to be blessed at some level because it came from Abraham. I mean, they went off. Obviously, they veered off the rails, but there was special protection because it came from Abraham as well. Um, yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop there. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Next week it'll be 5 o'clock once we change the clocks. Anyone has any questions, you can find me on Facebook at Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on Q&As, ethics of our fathers, Book of Leviticus. You want to send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman at gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN at gmail.com.